train just have the car. It's a lot of trees. Look at this. Pretty cool.
We took an afternoon bus from Fatima to Porto. To our surprise, there were a few pilgrim foreigners who came all the way from Scandinavia and Africa to attend the celebration during the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima. Our goal was to get a bed when we get to Porto for the night in the albergue of the Diocese of Porto, but unfortunately when we got there, there's only 3 spaces left, but there's 4 of us, so we called every accommodation in our list in the vicinity of the city of Porto. Only one welcomed us, a refugio. So what is a refugio? Walk with us to find out.
We have Portuguese or Porto dinner. It's a selfie. You like it?
We like it.
You like it?
I'm sure I like
The taste.
it. Might get full before.
This is a special bread.
Porto is probably one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful city in Europe. And it is the birthplace of Portugal. It comes from the word Portoscale. Portos is the name of the place south of the river Douro, and Cale is the name of the place north of the river Douro. It became known as Portucale, which evolved into Portugal. Both an albergue and a refugio accommodations are basically pilgrim hostels. The difference is more and more refugios nowadays are becoming donativo, or a donation-only accommodation. And besides, refugio is more bare bones compared to an albergue. In our case, Abel, our host and owner of our refugio, is a Camino pilgrim himself. He used to work as an engineer, but has now devoted himself completely to the care of the pilgrims who walk the way to Santiago. What a man! He even cooked meals for the pilgrims, but in our case, we got to his place pretty late, so there's no food left. However, he was kind enough to drive us to a restaurant near downtown so we can eat a Portuguese dinner. Thousands of Japanese people disappear without a trace every year. Don't worry, what I am about to tell you is not like that. The difference is, he did not disappear completely. You have to stay with us to hear an incredible story of a man who might as well be the Japanese version of Forrest Gump in a very good way. We usually wake up early, but not too early in the Camino to start our day. However, this morning, we woke up with an Asian man in the dining room of the refugio where we were staying. Started by introducing himself in possible English by saying that he recently retired. He said that he worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year without taking any vacation for more than 30 years. Then all of a sudden, he decided to buy a ticket to Europe with absolutely no plan where to go and what to do. He taught himself English on the plane on the way to Paris. When he got to Paris, he just went where he wanted until one day in a big city, he could not find an accommodation, so he slept on a bench in a local park. When he woke up, his 2 suitcases just beside him were gone. Luckily, his valuables were in a bag that he used as a pillow. He reported this to the local police. The police took a pity on him and his story that they let him stay in the police station for a few days. Then he was transferred to an albergue. But the albergue would only allow a 2-day stay at a time, so he decided he would go from one albergue to another. Until one day he decided to go to one big city to another all over Europe with very little resources. He showed us a big cardboard with a sign in 3 languages that reads that he needs a ride whenever he wants to go to another place by hitchhiking. He gets acquainted with the freebies in the city where he is in, so he could save money. and he always stays in the Donativo albergue or refugio. So we finally asked him, does anybody in Japan know where you are? He said, yes, my sister. And my wife asked him, how about your wife? He said, oh, she doesn't. She thought that I'm still working. I don't know if he's joking or not.
So apparently there's a tram here. It's the same tram that is in San Francisco. In fact, the ones in San Francisco is manufactured here in San Francisco, and they still use it. So
Today, we walk along a very old Roman aqueduct. But we met another interesting fella who walked with us on the stage. He was not a common pilgrim because of his faith. Well, what do I mean? Walk with us to know what makes this man a very interesting pilgrim. For some reason, what do you do is a very common question asked in the Camino. So today we met someone who is a pediatrician and who heads a 500-bed capacity hospital. So he lives a very busy life in Israel. As a Jew though, he calls walking the Camino a spiritual retreat away from being a doctor and a husband. He made it a point to tell us that he is not a Christian, but of Jewish faith while we were walking. We told him that we respect, honor, and understand that. For me though, I forgot to tell him that he is in good company. After all, both Jesus and Santiago were both Jewish, the reason why we're walking. In the Camino, there are stuff that a pilgrim should never do. And this stage taught us that particular valuable lesson of never committing the cardinal Camino sin. What do I mean? Walk with us as we walk 20 miles in this searing heat in May. We were never away for too long from civilization when we walk, and we mostly walk along vineyards, and for some reason there's not a lot of water faucet, and the houses that we pass by seems empty, so we made it a point to conserve our water. But since it's pretty hot during the day, we drank water often. By noon, we ran out of water. We just committed the ultimate cardinal Camino sin: never run out of water. We were so thirsty that we gave up and kept looking for a taxi to save us, but we could not find a single taxi. Until finally, we stumbled upon the first restaurant. The first thing we asked the waiter was not even water or food, but where can we get a taxi? In which he said, along the line of cheater in Portuguese. So instead of taking an exception to him, we thought about what he said, and after some food and water and needed rest, we decided to continue to walk to a 2,000-year-old town. Pontedelima is the oldest chartered town in Portugal, but its history is tied to its beautiful 2,000-year-old Roman bridge. It is said that when the Roman army came to cross this bridge, they hesitated. It is because they thought the river Lima was the mythical and equally beautiful river Lethe. They believed that crossing the river Lethe would make them lose all their memories. To prove that that is not the case, their general swam across the river Lima and recited the names of every soldier under him when he was finally over at the other side.
Here we are. It's a beautiful way from Pontedelima to Rubiaes. This is the third waterfall that we saw along the trail. Here's the waterfall right here. Probably a better one. Look at that. We're trail, we're on top of the mountain. And it's beautiful.
Today has the highest climb, but the good thing is the day is pretty short. There's a surprise stop before we reach the top. Come join us on this fourth day. Countless prayers written on a piece of paper or some object were left here at the foot of this cross as a sign of giving it all to God for Him to read and to answer.
That's how steep the climb is. We went from 0 to 1200 square, 1200 feet in just probably 4 to 5 miles. So here we are, we're on top of a mountain. And here's my peregrinos. We're so used to this because there's a lot of mountains in Texas.
Man,
Fun, fun, fun!
we're not even used to the heat. Pag mainit.
Trees have the cross. A lot of trees. Look at this. Pretty cool.
One of the oldest borders in the world is the one between Spain and Portugal, and today we're gonna cross the border to Spain. However, I can't remember in my world history that these two countries were really in conflict, so today we're going to a Roman town that might give us an answer. Vamos! We are some sort of in a walled city. We actually don't know where we're going. We just assume that we're going somewhere. See that? It's a big one. It's a walled city. There's a milestone somewhere in Valencia, or Valencia, I don't know how to pronounce it, with an inscription of Emperor Claudius in the 1st century. So clearly the place was a Roman fort at the very least. The fortress of Fortaleza de Valencia though is a pretty recent structure at 17th century as a defensive fort to protect the Portuguese from a Spanish invasion. In fact, there were instances in the past of Spanish invasion. Nowadays, it's just the Spanish tourists who invade the town for some bargains.
Portugal.
Bye, Portugal.
You've been so
Till
good to
next
us.
time. We had good experience.
So this is the cathedral. It looks like a fortress, like a castle. It's beautiful. This is the cathedral.
Okay, let's go.
Here we are in Tui, walking around in the town, which is really small.
Is politics about principle, or is it more of sometimes personality worship? It is always good to meet fellow Americans in the Camino. What we notice though, most Germans and Americans from blue states are more likely to talk about politics. However, we met an American who considers Texas and Alaska her home states, both red states, yet she is very liberal. She works with Doctors Without Borders in Europe and Middle East. But there was an interesting thing she said about Obama, who radically changed America. Come, let's walk and I'll tell you about it.
Good morning. This is I don't know how many days already. We've been walking and we're leaving Tui, which is the first town on the bank of the river on the Spain side. So here we are walking along a really beautiful park with guardrails. We were a little scared because we didn't know if we are on the right path. Thank God for our fearless leader. She followed the signs. Now we need coffee. So we're crossing a creek, a river, which is really nice, but it's very old. I mean, the bridge is. And here we are. And we haven't had any coffee yet. So we're thinking of just fishing. Maybe we can get fish here.
We met this young American lady in our beautiful albergue just outside Redondela. The albergue overlooks a beautiful valley that looks like Switzerland more than Spain. We then had a dinner together over tapas and wine. We talked about the Camino, and she also started to talk about politics. She was surprised to know that as minorities in Texas, that we are pro-life and conservative because of our faith. The conversation was cordial and fun, as we are not really into politics. But when I asked her about what she thinks of what happened in Iraq when Obama's military bombed a hospital where Doctor Without Borders operated, it killed many people. At first she was quiet, then she said Obama must have a reason for it. So much for principled liberals when it comes to personality worship. Did you know that there's a town in Galicia that claims Christopher Columbus is not Genoese, but their own native son? That's because they claim that the ship Santa Maria was built here. Interested yet? Let's go, vamos! Upon arriving in Pontevedra, we quickly noticed that the town has a lot of young people roaming around. The center of the town is car-free. It has a lot of history as it is always tied to Portuguese way of the Camino de Santiago. Pontevedra means Old Bridge in Galician, the local language. However, people here are proud and claim that Santa Maria, which is the ship of Christopher Columbus, was built here. So therefore, Christopher Columbus is not actually Italian, but a Gallego, the people of Galicia. He is said to be Pedro Madruga, who faked his own death to become Christopher Columbus. Well, I guess Colon Street, the oldest street in the Philippines in Cebu City, should now be called Madruga Street.
So here we are at Pontevedra, and look at my Chinese wife, she's doing it the Chinese way. Hola, buenos días. Sí, sí, sí. Hola.
Just a few miles from Pontevedra is another Camino route. This route is full of the ancient charm that brings back the time when life was simpler and that God was the center of most people's lives. Vamos! First, I had an accident where I missed a step when I saw a car approaching and actually rolled over to the long grass a foot below. I was okay though, as I did not fight my fall but rather purposely rolled down to avoid injury. So we stumbled upon the variante espiritual of the Camino, which I think would just add another day to your Portuguese should you choose to do it. It looks very interesting as possible accommodations include monasteries. It would be an interesting spiritual experience. There's a town that claims an irrefutable proof of St. James' body being brought to Galicia and eventually ended up in Santiago. For those who doubt the remains of St. James being in the cathedral, this may present a different angle to your skepticism.
Why not?
12 para el de calcetines por 5 euros. 9 para el tobilleros por 5 euros. Caballero, señora o niño. 12 para el de calcetines por 5 euros. 9 para el tobillero por 5 euros. Caballero, señora o niño. 12 para el de calcetines por 5 euros. 9 para el tobillero por 5 euros. Caballero, señora o niño.
Where? Oh yeah. Churros chocolate.
Por 5 euros. 9 para el tobillero por 5
Eh, churros,
euros.
palitan.
Caballero, señora o niño.
Novedades en blusas.
9 para el tobillero por 5
Oh,
euros.
baliktad.
Caballero, señora o niño.
Chocolate, oh. Churros chocolate.
12 para el de
I'll try
calcetines
one.
por
I'll
5
try
euros. 9 para el tobillero por 5
Are you gonna buy? I mean, it's a lot. Oh, there's cherries.
This is really a church called the parish of Saint James the Apostle. The very Saint James the Apostle of the way which the Camino is named after. So blessed. So blessed. It's very, very good.
The town of Padron gets its name from Padron, which is the 2,000-year-old stone shown here where St. James' body was said to have been anchored, or its boat or ship, when it was shipwrecked on this town.
Is it right now? ¿Qué hora es?
Alas 9:40.
It's 9:40, May 23, and we can see Santiago from here. We're about an hour away, and we're walking the last leg of the Camino. Thanks be to God. Woohoo!
When the news of the body of St. James was discovered in early or late 8th century in the fields of Compostela, where the present-day Santiago Cathedral is, King Alfonso II embarked the very first pilgrimage from the city of Oviedo to the tomb of St. James in Santiago. But was he the first pilgrim? Let's all find out as we walk the last stage to the famous Santiago Cathedral.
After 300 miles, we're here. Ate, sideways. Sideways.
Hello, do you want to take Santiago cake? Hello, do you want to take Santiago cake? Give me
thank
cake.
you.
Number 44.
So here we are. We are in Compostela. We finally made it.
Kasi dili mamangkot tati press.
We're here again.
In the Acts of the Apostles, St. James was the first apostle to be martyred by Herod when he returned home, apparently from the Roman province of Hispania, or the present-day Spain. According to tradition, two of his apostles, Anastasius and Teodorico, the first disciples of St. James, accompanied his body back to Spain. That ended up in Area Flavia, the present-day Padron. So technically, these two Galicians were probably the first pilgrims of the Camino. Well, that's my take. You can take it or leave it. The origin of the incense, like in the Baphomet, goes back to the practice of the Jews. The Lord instructed Moses to build a golden altar for the burning of incense in Exodus 30 verse 1 to 10, which was placed in front of the veil to the entrance of the meeting tent where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. The purpose of incensing and the symbolic value of the smoke is that of purification and sanctification. The smoke symbolizes the prayers of the faithful drifting up to the heaven. The psalmist prays, "Let my prayer come like incense before you, the lifting of my hands like the evening sacrifice." Psalm 141. Incense also creates the ambience of heaven. The book of Revelation describes the heavenly worship as follows. Another angel came in holding a censer of gold. He took his place at the altar of incense and was given a large amount of incense to deposit in the altar of gold in front of the throne, together with the prayers of all God's holy ones. From the angel's hand, the smoke of the incense went up before God, and with it the prayers of God's people. Revelation chapter 8, verse 3 to 4. The Baphomet is a large turibal that hangs by means of a system of pulleys from the main dome of the cathedral and swings towards the side naves. It takes 8 men to move it, who are known as tirabuleros. The Baphomet is used for liturgy, in the same way as a priest would use a censer at the altar. It operates during the cathedral's important solemnities during the entrance procession or at the end of the Eucharist. This is to symbolize the true attitude of the faithful. In the same way that the smoke from the incense rises to the top of the altar's naves, so must the prayers of the countless pilgrims rise to reach the heart of God. The aroma of the incense also perfumes the entire basilica, so must Christians, so with their virtues and testimony of their lives, impregnate with a good scent of Christ in their respective homes. Our Camino was a spiritual retreat, a time away from home, a time for prayer and meditation, a time for learning and enrichment. It is also a time of intercession and opportunity to pray for others. It was a time to offer thanksgiving for blessings received.